Alright, we have question 4 in our Celestial University. Excuse me, we are going to answer it right now. So, we have the 8th house complex, Pluto, fortune, and quantum tunneling. So, Pluto in the 8th house represents the quantum tunneling effect, the ability to pass through barriers that classical physics deems impossible. Fortune here indicates wealth emerges precisely through these tunneling events. Let's analyze the native 8th house complex. Pluto in Sag, 24 degrees 17, 8th house and part of fortune. In Sag, 22 degrees 01 in the 8th. These are within 2 degrees 14 of an orb. Calculate the part of fortune using both day and night formulas to verify. Then explain how Pluto's proximity to fortune creates a black hole effect. Matter, wealth, is compressed into extreme density before being ejected as new stars, businesses. The 8th house cusp is 19 degrees 23 Sag with both Pluto and fortune inside. However, Rahu in Aries at 25 degrees 19 at the 12th house is applying a trine to Pluto with an orb of 1 degrees 01 in fortune, an orb of 3 degrees 17. Analyze this trine as a quantum tunnel between the 8th, transformation through others' resources, and the 12th, solitary spiritual work. How can the native use solitude to attract investment? And fixed star Antares at 9 degrees 49 Sag. It's in the native's 8th house, conjunct Pluto by sign, but wide orb. Antares is one of the 4 royal stars associated with wealth and war. Explain how Antares activates the Pluto fortune conjunction and what specific types of wealth, technology, healing, or something else this indicates. Include Antares' martial nature in your analysis. Finally, the native will experience Pluto return to its natal position around age 248. That's really funny. Obviously not in this lifetime. Alright? Because I have Pluto in Sag. And I was born in 2005. Alright, however, Pluto's transits to the 8th house are critical. Let's identify the next 3 major Pluto transits by aspect to the natal 8th house planets, points, and explain how each represents a quantum leap in wealth accumulation, including dates and specific manifestations. Alright? Alright, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. I've done a lot of work with astrology. Alright. So, the 8th house is quantum singularity. While the 8th house in astrology governs death, rebirth, other people's resources, inheritance, sexuality, and the occult, domains where boundaries dissolve and transformation occurs. In quantum physics, the phenomenon of quantum tunneling describes how particles pass through energy barriers that classical physics deems impassable. An electron, for instance, can tunnel through a potential barrier even when it lacks the classical energy to surmount it. The native's 8th house, with Pluto in Sag at 24 degrees 17 and POF in Sag 22 degrees 01, represents precisely such a tunneling region. Wealth for this native will not come through linear effort or conventional career paths. It will come through quantum leaps, sudden penetrations through barriers that others find insurmountable. This essay analyzes the 8th house complex as a quantum tunneling system, demonstrating how the native's trauma, transformation, and access to other people's resources create a wealth portal that activates at specific times and through specific conscious practices. Alright, so we're going from part A through D, starting with part A, which is Pluto conjunct fortune, the black hole effect. Calculation and verification of the POF. Okay, so before analyzing the conjunction, we have to verify the POF, and we calculate it using the following formula. So for the day birth, we would do sun above horizon, right? Fortune equals ascendant and moon, subtracting the sun. And a night birth formula is the sun below horizon. Fortune equals the ascendant, and the sun subtracting the moon. Alright, so the native was born at 9:53 a.m. on 2/26/05 in St. Paul, Oman. Sunrise on this date was approximately 6:55 a.m., so the sun was above the horizon at birth. Therefore, this is a day birth, and we use the day formula. Okay, and of course, this is just Central Standard. Okay, so Western chart positions show ascendant is at 23 degrees, 55 Taurus, moon is at 6 degrees, 14 Libra, and sun is at 8 degrees, 09 Pisces. But we can invert this to a 360 degrees notation, where ascendant at 23 degrees, 55 Taurus equals 30 degrees Aries, plus that 23 degrees, 55, and then that equals 53 degrees, 55. Moon, it's at 614 Libra, 180 degrees plus 614 degrees, and that equals 186 degrees, 14. And then sun at 8 degrees, 09 Pisces, of course, equals 330 degrees plus 8 degrees, 09, and that equals 338 degrees, 09. Alright, now let's do this. Fortune equals ascendant and moon subtracting the sun equals 53 degrees 55 plus 186 degrees 14 subtracting 338 degrees 09 equaling 240 degrees 09 subtracting 338 degrees 09, and this gives a negative result, so we add 360 degrees again. And that equals 240 degrees 09 subtracting 338 degrees 09 equaling negative 98 degrees. Adding 360 degrees, it equals 262 degrees. Then we convert 262 degrees back to the sign. So 262 degrees subtracting 240 degrees, because Sagittarius starts at 240 degrees and it equals 22 degrees Sag. So our result, our POF, equals 22 degrees 01 Sag, exactly matching the provided data. Fortune Sag, 22 degrees 01. And we found that out using math. Alright. Now our verification is complete. Pluto is at 24 degrees 17 Sag, and the Fortune is at 22 degrees 01 Sag. This is an orb between Pluto and Fortune, and it's 2 degrees 16. It's applying as Pluto is ahead of the Fortune. This is a tight conjunction, especially considering Pluto's slow motion and the Fortune-sensitive point nature. Then we look at the black hole effect. So in astrophysics, a black hole forms when mass is compressed beyond a critical density, creating a gravitational singularity from which not even light can escape. Around the black hole, an accretion disk forms, matter spiraling inward, heating up, and emitting intense radiation before crossing the event horizon. So Pluto in the 8th house functions as an astrological black hole. Let's talk about what it represents. Specifically, Pluto in the 8th house, we're talking about extreme compression. The native's experiences of trauma, violation, and loss have compressed her consciousness, creating immense density of experience. Event horizon, the boundary between her personal suffering and transformed wisdom. Once crossed, nothing returns to its previous state. and singularity, the point where all experience collapses into infinite density, the core of her power. So the POF conjunct Pluto means that her wealth, fortune, is inside the accretion disk, spiraling toward the singularity, heating up, about to cross the event horizon. Alright, the accretion disk model. So the native's life can be modeled as matter spiraling toward the Pluto black hole. We look at the outer disk from ages 0 through 18. Trauma accumulates. Alright, the brain is easily molded. Familial trauma, relationship, sexual trauma, even autism-related challenges, neurodivergency, mental health struggles. This is matter being drawn into the gravitational field. Alright? And then we have our inner disk, which is ages 18 through 25, where the matter heats up, and we begin consciously working with our trauma, transforming it through therapy, art, and now astrological understanding. So the fortune point enters the inner disk, for me specifically. Event horizon, ages 25 through 30, crossing the threshold where trauma fully transforms into power and wealth manifests not after transformation but as transformation. And finally, singularity, ages 30 and beyond, becoming the source, transformed consciousness generates wealth continuously like Hawking radiation from a black hole. Alright? And this is how we as astrologers keep our clients excited, really. Let's talk about wealth through compression. So the Pluto fortune conjunction indicates that wealth emerges precisely where life has been most compressed. For example, sexual trauma, compressed, wealth through sex education, trauma healing or body work, once healed, of course. Familial trauma compressed, wealth through family systems work, ancestral healing or inheritance. Autism compression, wealth through neurodivergent advocacy, sensory technology, or unique cognitive gifts. Isolation compression, wealth through solitary creative work that reaches millions. Alright, quantum tunneling through the barrier. The black hole analogy extends to quantum tunneling. In classic physics, matter cannot escape a black hole. In quantum physics, Hawking radiation allows particles to tunnel through the event horizon. Similarly, the native's wealth cannot manifest through classical means, linear career, conventional employment. It must tunnel through the barrier of her trauma. The tunneling mechanism is trauma creates barrier, conscious observation, tunneling event. And the 2 degree 16 orb between Pluto and Fortune indicates that this tunneling is already occurring. Fortune is inside Pluto's field, preparing to emerge, transformed. And that's why I call myself the Phoenix Rising. I actually really enjoy it. As a detransitioner. Alright. So now, we're going to jump into part B, which is the North Node Rahu. Trine, Pluto, and Fortune. And this is the quantum tunnel. Let me get 6 marks on it. Alright? So, Rahu in Aries. 25 degrees 19, of course, it's in the 12th house. And it forms a trine to Pluto and Sag at 24 degrees 17 in my 8th house. With an orb of 1 degree 02 applying into the POF in Sag, 22 degrees 01, with an orb of 3 degrees 18, and it's applying, creates a quantum tunnel between the 8th house being transformation through others' resources, and the 12th house being solitude, spirituality, and the unconscious. So the trine is quantum tunnel. Well, in quantum mechanics, a tunnel is a region of space where the potential barrier is thin enough for particles to pass through. The trine aspect, 120 degrees, represents such a tunnel, a harmonious connection that allows energy to flow between otherwise separate domains. The 8th and 12th houses are both water houses. 8th is Scorpio's domain, 12th is Pisces' domain. but they represent different depths. So the 8th house is the deep ocean of shared resources, intimacy, death, and rebirth, transformation through engagement with others. While the 12th house is the abyss of solitude, spirituality, and the collective unconscious, transformation through disengagement from others. So Rahu in the 12th, trining Pluto in the 8th, creates a tunnel between these two modes. The native can access the 8th house resources, investments, inheritance, partnerships through 12th house activities, solitude, meditation, spiritual practice, and vice versa. Alright, we'll skip through that. Alright, let's talk about Antares in the 8th house. The royal star activation, because I love talking about stars, honestly. I love stars. I also love talking about astrology. But yeah. Anyways, Antares in the 8th house, the royal star activation, 5 marks. So Antares at 9 degrees 49 Sag, it's one of the 4 royal stars of Persia, specifically the Watcher of the West. It's associated with Mars-like energy, wealth through risk, protection during transformation, and the ability to face death and rebirth. Let's talk about Antares in my 8th house, or just in the 8th house in general. So Antares at 9 degrees 49 Sag, it falls in my 8th, conjunct Pluto at 24 degrees 17 Sag by sign, with a wide orb of 14 degrees 28. However, in fixed starward conjunctions by the sign, they're often considered significant even with wide orbs, especially when the star is as powerful as Antares. So the 8th house cusp is at 19 degrees 23 Sag, so Antares is at 9 degrees 49, and it's actually before the cusp in the 7th house by whole sign. Let's check carefully. So these are the western house cusps, and you'd say these are tropical. Or, if you want to be really fancy, Gregorian. Alright, so the 8th house, it's holding 19 degrees 23 Sag to 19 degrees 23 Cap. As we see, Antares at 9 degrees 49 Sag is 9 degrees 34 before the 8th house cusp, placing it in the 7th house, Scorpio, 23 degrees 55 to Sag, 19 degrees 23. However, fixed stars are often interpreted by their sign position regardless of house, and many astrologers use a broader orb for stars given that Pluto at 24 degrees 17 is firmly in the 8th, and Antares is in the same sign. We can consider them connected by sign-based resonance. So more significantly, the POF at 22 degrees 01 Sag, it's in the 8th house and much closer to Antares, 12 degrees 12 orb, but again, this is a wide orb. So let's look at the Vedic chart for clarity, also known as Indian. Alright, so our Vedic positions. We have Pluto in Sag at 0 degrees 21 in the 8th house in Vedic, but the Vedic houses show 8th in Sag. Well, let's check for Vedic house cusp from data. So the data shows that the 8th house is not listed, but the 9th house is in Capricorn, so the 8th house is Sag, and Pluto at 0 degrees 21 Sag, it's in the 8th house in Vedic. We know that POF is in Scorpio at 28 degrees 06 Vedic, but this actually switched to the 7th house in Scorpio in Vedic. So Antares at 9 degrees 49 Sag, tropical, corresponds to about 16 degrees Sag, sidereal, with a 24 degrees Ayanamsa difference approximately. And this would place Antares in sidereal Sag as well, possibly conjunct Vedic Pluto. We're saying 16 degrees versus about 0 degrees 21, and it's still very, very wide. Alright. Given these complexities, let's interpret Antares based on its traditional significance and its relationship to the 8th house complex by sign and by its known influence. So Antares, it is the wealth through risk star, meaning Antares is the heart of the Scorpion, though now in Sag constellation, and its name means rival of Mars due to its red color. Its influences include martial courage, the ability to face danger and conflict, wealth through risk, success in speculative ventures, investments, and battles, protection during transformation, guards those who undergo death rebirth processes, and occult power, access to hidden knowledge and resources. Now we look at the activation of Pluto Fortune by Antares. Alright? For example, Antares activates the Pluto Fortune conjunction by adding Mars-like courage, because Pluto alone can be overwhelming, and the native may fear her own power. Antares provides the warrior spirit to face Pluto's depths without flinching, and when she feels afraid of her own transformation, facing trauma, asking for investment, claiming her power, Antares whispers, "You are a warrior. Proceed." Alright? Let's skip down to our last part, which is the next 3 major Pluto transits and the quantum leaps in wealth. So, Pluto transits are among the most significant astrological events, representing death rebirth cycles and deep transformation, and for this native, with Pluto in the 8th house conjunct the fortune, Pluto transits to her 8th house complex will trigger wealth manifestations through quantum tunneling. Let's identify the next 3 major Pluto transits by aspect to the natal 8th house planets and points, with dates and specific manifestations. Alright? Oh, that was my topic. Alright. So, we're looking at Pluto conjunct the natal Pluto, or Pluto return, which I don't believe is going to happen. Well, it already happened, excuse me. So, February through March 2025, there was the first exact transit, and continuing through 2025 through 2026 with retrograde passages. So, Pluto is currently in Aquarius. This is wrong. So our current Pluto position, of course, is in Aquarius and is approximately 2 through 3 degrees Aquarius, and it won't return to Sag in this lifetime. Pluto return, Pluto conjunct natal Pluto, occurs approximately every 248 years. The native's Pluto return will occur around the year 2253, which is not relevant. So Pluto transits mean transiting Pluto, currently in Aquarius, moving through Capricorn, Aquarius, etc., aspecting natal 8th house points. So we look at our correct interpretation, transiting Pluto aspect natal 8th house. So we have our details and our points. We know where Pluto is. We know where the POF is. And we know where our 8th house cusp is. Alright, so transiting Pluto now in Aquarius, it will aspect these points by square from Aquarius to Scorpio, Sag. Well, Aquarius square Scorpio, fixed signs, and is semi-sextile Sag, 30 degrees. Let's calculate all the aspects though. So, first we have our Pluto square natal Pluto fortune. And this might look a little bit confusing, but let's walk through it. Actually, we might have to revise this. Alright. Yeah, we'll revise that. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. We're going to go over a different question, of course, in my next video. So subscribe, like, and comment for question 5, and I will see you there with peace and love.